Welcome back to Worldviews. Now, joining us today on the program is Dario Linares. Dario is a senior lecturer in film and digital media at Falmouth University, and he's published on representations of identity in film and popular culture, including his most recent book on the astronaut as a media icon. He's also written on the cultural effects of austerity and is the leader of a research project analyzing cinema spectatorship in the digital age. He's a regular contributor of film reviews to www.alternatetakes.co.uk and to the online radio station amazingradio.co.uk. And just recently, he became a contributor at UK Progressive. And indeed, it was an article yesterday that he wrote about the Woolwich murder that we're going to be discussing today, as well as impacts on Twitter. And speaking of Twitter, you can follow him on Twitter at Dario That's D-A-R-I-O, then the word double and L. Dario Linares, welcome to Worldview.
Hi, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Now, in your article yesterday that came across, quite late, but still essentially breaking news about what was going on in Woolwich in South London, we talked a little bit about how you had gotten most of your reporting and most of the news directly from a single source on Twitter. And I've noted a couple of times in my own stories that very often people on Twitter have the story well before the traditional mainstream media news outlets such as the BBC or CNN or even Al Jazeera. And in going back and reviewing some of the stories last night, indeed many of the U.S. media outlets, mostly obsessed with what's going on in Oklahoma City, had not really covered it, except a couple on the right wing were very sensational. A couple on the left wing were still trying to get more details. Let's talk a little bit about the role of social media and how you see it becoming such a major source in the continuing collection and reporting of news.
Well, I think there's sort of two major factors. I think that the immediacy is probably the first one. Now, if you think about mainstream media, whenever a story breaks at any given point, at any given location, there has to be a time lag between when a reporter can get there from when the mainstream news source gets a story, when either they get it from the police or a member of the public runs it in. So there's always going to be at least 15, 20 minutes, half an hour lag before the reporter gets there to assess what's going on, and then they have to make that assessment. Now, with any sort of breaking story, an immediate story, there is always going to be somebody on the scene. Now, up until the arrival of social media, that person, may have just run away or stayed there and watched or got involved, whatever they might have done. But today, most likely somebody who is witnessing the event is going to have some kind of social media device, a mobile phone with them, in which they will either make a video recording or tweet a response or tweet something that is happening. I think that immediacy is something that shows that mainstream media is always now slightly behind the curveball in a way perhaps that they never have been before. I mean, I was quite amazed that horrific video of the guy that was shown first on ITV, I think, with the bloodied hands. I was quite amazed that wasn't on YouTube, that ITV actually got that. That's unusual, I think, now. I think normally that those kind of videos appear on YouTube first. And I think that possibly the other important factor we have to think about here is the way in which social media actually cuts through the filtering and selection systems that the mainstream media employs. So the mainstream media always have to make decisions about what they're going to cover. They have a priority list. We're going to cover story A, story B, story C. And whenever they cover those stories, they're putting a hierarchy, a priority onto those stories. And also, they are going to filter them or select the ways in which the information is going to be framed. And therefore, it comes across in a specific kind of way. And I think that social media and the way that the immediacy coupled with the kind of language and the way that information comes through in an unfiltered sense is really making the mainstream media have to react to social media rather than react to the event, perhaps, for the first.
Let me jump in here for a second, because you do have a bit of an issue with mainstream media in that you have to get the story right. Yeah. Now, you don't necessarily have that in social media. Indeed, we've seen situations in the past where even governments in places such as Tahrir Square in Egypt, I wrote a book about social media and the effects there, that can be used also as well as a disinformation tool as well as a tool by which to get a different narrative out there. That you had a number of people that were just watching state TV in Egypt, for example. So what responsibility do reporters and journalists have in the rush to get there first? Because we saw this terribly with the Boston bombing. People were, I think even Jon Stewart of The Daily Show made a parody out of, come to me, come to me, come to me. There are cars going. We don't know where they're going, but they're going quick. And I think I smell smoke and I hear a lot of noise. But there was nothing to report, but they were so afraid of being scooped by somebody on social media. Talk a little bit about the responsibility that a journalist would have.
Well, I think that there's a difference between somebody who is walking past an event on the street and the journalists themselves and what they do with the information that they may get from those people who are just photographing or tweeting things who are on the street. I think that, in a way, the journalistic responsibility is still the same as perhaps it ever was. But as you suggest, in this immediate social media world, the rush to get the scoop has perhaps undermined some of those integrities that may have been fundamental to the origins of journalism in its kind of idealistic sense. I think that that isn't social media's fault. I don't think. I think that rush to get the scoop has always been there. And if you look at things like Hackgate, and you look at the history of sort of tabloid news and the push to try and get a story first, and even things like intimidating sources or any kind of bad practice of journalism that you want to think about, then there's always problems. I mean, one of the points that I raised in my article yesterday was how Nick Robinson, the top political editor on the BBC, was reporting somebody a source he had obviously got, who had said the assailants were, in inverted commas, Muslim looking. Now, when that video came out from social media, I mean, again, I'd hate to say what does Muslim looking actually mean, but having watched those videos of that assailant who was just some street kid from London and talked with a London accent, I defy anybody to say that he was Muslim looking. So the immediacy of that video that was shown was undermined the parameters or the framework in which the BBC's Nick Robinson had put out the information on the BBC earlier.
And indeed, he looked more Afro-Caribbean than Muslim. So we all have a different picture of what a quote unquote Muslim would look like as a result of the fears that have been seeded in the media. By the way, we're speaking with Dr. Dario Linares from Falmouth University on Worldview with Dennis Campbell. Dario, I want to talk a little bit more about social media and the immediacy of it. I happen to have seen this quite up close with both Tahrir Square in Egypt. But even before that, back as far as 2009, my wife was traveling in the Netherlands and there was a Turkish Airlines crash short of the runway in Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. And it crashed into the polder. It killed 12 people. 126 people walked away. And there was a young man there with a cell phone with a camera, and he was actually reporting what was going on. And of course, my wife had driven past the scene. She called me as well. So I was immediately following on Twitter, and I started a timer just to see when the first word would appear from the mainstream media, BBC, CNN, and others. And it was about 18 minutes for each of them before, as you said earlier, they got there. Now, what happens in those 18 minutes? Can we talk a little bit about that? Because clearly there's a lot of pressure now being put on news outlets. How do they catch up? Well,
it's a very difficult question. I think one of the things is that the mainstream media don't actually know yet. If you think about Twitter and social media, it is still a very recent phenomenon. And I don't think that people in the media generally and commentators, sort of academics that I encounter in my career, it's still playing catch up with what the implications of what social media are doing to journalism. I mean, a lot of sort of journalism courses, the social media elements are still catching up with the professional journalism. So it's behind this curve. In that 80 minutes, I suppose there is a sense in which there's a collection of all the information that's out there available. I always think that the problem with the mainstream media is that there's a rush to frame the narrative, as I would say. And with the social media, it's very difficult to do that in a coherent way. I always think of the way that Twitter comes through on your timeline as very chaotic. And that can be a problem, but it can also be an advantage. I mean, I just think of my own immediate use of Twitter. When I first started using it, I was I was a bit nonplussed. You know, I tweeted a few things out there. Nobody replied. I thought, well, this is useless. But then I was encouraged. I carried on using it. And eventually, you know, you streamline the people you follow, you pick up followers yourself, and you gain a sort of a sense of what is going on in the world, and you get a correlation of news across different kinds of sources, and you almost are able to pick out a narrative for yourself.
And of course, there are tools out there that will help you to follow individuals such as TweetDeck and the like, that you know, so that when an event occurs. Anyways, Dario, thank you. We're running a little bit out of time today, so we've been speaking with Dr. Dario Linares. He's a lecturer in film and digital media at Falmouth University. I want to thank you for being with us on Worldview.
Thanks, Dennis.
It's been a great pleasure having you. We've been talking about the Woolwich murder yesterday of a soldier and the way in which it was covered on media and social media. Now, coming up on the program, we're going to go back to Wisconsin, where that trial of the farmer who's involved in raw milk is wrapping up. We hope to hear directly from Liz Reitzig, who's been in the theater across from the courthouse. We hope to have a verdict sometime later this evening, and we'll learn a little bit more about what actually transpired and what the future is for that poor farmer, Mr. Vernon Hirschberger. You're watching Worldview with Dennis Campbell. Stay right here.